A couple of years ago, I developed this habit of breaking up words to find their true meaning. Most of us are aware that you can turn impossible into I'm possible. But let's look at the word together. When you add a couple of spaces after the right letter, you will end up with to get her. Now, how much easier would your life be if you did get all the hers in your life? Let's be honest. No matter what gender you are, at times it is difficult to get her, to understand her. To get her is the essence of my story. But in order for you to get me, we're all going to travel back to 1973. About a month ago, I turned 16, and my dad hasn't spoken to me for days. He's really angry, as much with himself as he is with me. As I'm following him out the front door, he turns around abruptly and he screams into my face, "Don't think you're going to get married!" As I hadn't, I defiantly screamed back, "I don't!" I'm at an age where the toughest choice should be what to wear, how to style my hair and makeup. That could have been my life if I hadn't chosen to find out exactly what happens when those panel vans are a-rocking. Though as I did a couple of months ago, I am now faced with a life-changing decision. I have three options: marriage, abortion, or adoption. They all seem flawed to me. So I turned to the so-called adults to ask for their advice, never realising that it came wrapped in what's best for them solution. It took me 50 years to realise that one. Though, as my curiosity had brought shame and guilt, no, just shame, to my Catholic middle-class family, I had very little choice but to follow what society expected from me, which was to be sent away to an unmarried mother's home for 5 months. No one does shame and guilt like the nuns do. Then to give birth to my child all alone in a hospital where the doctors and the nurses were not playing very nice. To relinquish all of my rights and to never see or hold my baby daughter, who I chose to call Liza Mary. And then get on with life as though none of this has happened. So I did it all except the never see your daughter. During the 6 weeks cooling off period that I had before her adoption, her father and I visited her 3 times in hospital. On the third occasion, the nurses said to us, "We are breaking the law by letting you see her. You can see her now, but never come back again." I can remember holding her, just cuddling her, saying, "This is the best thing for you. Everyone's told me I'm too young to look after you. So we're giving you to a family who is financially secure, who will love you and look after you, and you're going to have the best life. They'll treat you like a princess. But please, just remember me." And then I got on with life. But she was always on my mind. If we go a few years down the road, I appeared very successful. Married with 3 boys, beautiful home, lots of friends, an amazing career, and even a mature age master's degree, an overseas trip, but had it come at too high a price because she was always on my mind. For every success, the hole in my heart would get bigger and bigger and bigger. And I was really good at filling that hole with not so ideal choices. Though one of my better choices was, because it was a closed adoption, I could never check in on her. And as I matured, I started to really worry about her, thinking, is that really what some fathers do to their children? I thought, But anyway, so I would go to clairvoyance to check in on her. And I'd ask questions like, is she happy? Is she safe? Is she loved? Will I ever meet her? And they would always go, yes, 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 and yes. When she's 21, she will come and find you. So I'd leave there with a skip in my step and start counting down the years, the months and the days. Then just before her 22nd birthday, I was filled with grief as I read this article about adoptees. It clearly stated that most adoptees will not find their birth parents because they feel they've been rejected once and they don't want to be rejected again. My grief and anger and disappointment quickly turned to a resolution. I must find her. I must let her know that I've always wanted her in my life, and I was sorry that I had made a permanent decision for a temporary problem, my inability to care for my child at 16. Thankfully, the adoption laws changed in 1991, and it was quite easy for me to find her details. I received her adoptive birth certificate, and her name was now Kimberly. So I wrote Kimberly a letter in March of 96, and then I waited and waited and waited. But what was really good in the waiting was the fact that she's obviously very happy if she doesn't need to contact you, and isn't that what you wanted? Her to have a happy ever after life. And then around April 2001, I received a letter from her. And as you can imagine, I replied to the letter straight away, which really scared her because it took her 5 years to respond to mine. So in December of 2001, we met physically for the first time. It went well. But because we were so wrapped up in the beliefs of the adoption rhetoric, which is the happy ever after, it took us almost 17 more years before we could truly come together in a loving way, mainly because we were both defending our choices. And it stopped us from taking that life-changing 12-inch journey from your head to your heart. For me, I was really scared to take that journey because I didn't want my beliefs to come to the surface. I was a horrible person. What mother carries their baby for 42 weeks, then gives birth to her, and then leaves her in a hospital for 6 weeks without any special cuddles, and then gives her away to strangers? No loving mother does that. But I knew that as the mother, I really wanted a relationship with Kim. So I did that deep dive. And most of you who have started that deep dive know it's a lifelong journey. But the more I deep dived into all areas of my life, the more I forgave me, the more I started to really love me. I came to a decision that for Kim and I, we need to choose. We either stop being in each other's lives, stop hurting each other, or we start to love each other. And thankfully, we chose to start loving and healing each other. And surprisingly, all of these resources came into our life to assist us in that loving and healing journey. One of those resources was earlier this year, we both watched a 2012 ABC documentary about the practices of the adoption industry in the 60s and 70s. It made me realise that maybe my choice was never my choice to make, because this social worker, who was a young social worker in 1972, said that they had one job to do, and that job was get those adoption papers signed. Shut them up, stop them crying, say whatever you have to say in order to get those adoption papers signed. These deplorable practices were reconfirmed in March of 2013 when Prime Minister Julia Gillard delivered her national adoption apologies. This is a snippet from what she had to say.
We deplore the shameful practices that denied you, the mothers, your fundamental rights and responsibilities to love and care for your children. You were not legally or socially acknowledged as their mothers, and you were yourselves deprived of care and support. To you, the mothers who were betrayed by a system that gave you no choice and subjected you to manipulation, mistreatment and malpractice, we apologise. We say sorry to you, the mothers who were denied knowledge of your rights, which meant you could not provide informed consent. You were given false assurances. You were forced to endure the coercion and brutality of practices that were unethical, dishonest and in many cases illegal, subjected you to manipulation, mistreatment.
The adoption industry focuses on what was gained. They very rarely comment on what's been lost. Adoption starts with loss, suffered by both the birth parents and their child. Unfortunately, it took Kim and I a really long time for us to understand that. But thankfully, we now have a loving relationship. She's even in the room tonight. But it hasn't been easy. To be quite honest, it's really hard. But we are determined to always remember and to move forward, because our 48-year mother-daughter journey back to each other really does highlight that it is important to get her.